Absolutely. Again, if you are just joining us, we are talking to Dr. Umar Johnson. We're talking about China's footprint in Africa. This is the Empower Hour. What kind of question, Brother Umar? Chinese men fathering the children in Africa and then leaving them. I've been hearing and reading a lot about that as of late. What's your thoughts surrounding that?
Well, since the beginning of time, any colonizer that has come to Africa has intentionally sought to reproduce with the African woman to create a class of people who are biologically African but psychologically loyal to their father's flag. The European Jew did it. The Portuguese did it. The French did it. The British did it. They all created this class of biracial Africans that would be loyal to the flag of their father's country. And that's what the Chinese are doing. So in 20 years from now, you're going to have a whole population of Chinese who will function as a black bourgeoisie against the indigenous African, who will be well funded by China in the interest of Chinese domination of the continent. The only way to stop that is for our sisters to stop reproducing with them. But the only way you're going to get black women to stop reproducing with them is if we empower the sisters over there, just like we need to empower the brothers with economic opportunity. Let's be clear. The reason black women are having sex with these Chinese men ain't because they consider the Chinese man attractive. It's because when they look at the Chinese man, they see an opportunity. And if they have a baby with the Chinese man, they see an opportunity. They say that this child is going to be well taken care of, and through my baby, I'll be able to improve my life. It all goes back to economic opportunity. You will not have this. It's a big problem in Nigeria as well. The Chinese having babies with the Nigerian woman. So you got these Chinese Nigerians running around, the Chinese Ghanaians running around. It's not going to stop until we empower brothers and sisters on the continent so they don't have to make a mockery of themselves to try to improve their quality of life.
So you touched on it. You're talking about reparations. So that's kind of been a hot topic of late. What are your thoughts on the ADOS movement?
I don't support the ADOS movement. I believe it is very divisive. First of all, you do not have to disidentify from Africa or African people in order to fight for reparations. First of all, that's ridiculous. One does not require the other. Number two, it makes the African immigrant, which only numbers about 3% of all African people in this country, it makes the African immigrant the scapegoat for everything that's going wrong in Black America. But at the same time, the leaders of the ADOS movement have not targeted the LBGTs for how they have stripped away from black people everything that we fought for in terms of civil rights. They haven't targeted the Latinos. They haven't targeted the feminists. They haven't targeted the immigrants. They're simply picking on black folks. First of all, the United States government is not in love with African immigrants, which is why it is so difficult for Africans to get to America in the first place. If you are here, it is because of a diplomatic relationship that your family has with America. If you are here, it is a student visa. It is a work visa. You just don't decide you want to come to Africa and you come. I have friends in Africa who've been trying to get here to visit me for over 10 years, and they can't even get a visa to get here. So to try to make the African immigrant a scapegoat for what's going on in Black America is absolutely ridiculous. Furthermore, okay, I totally take issue with the fact that they strongly identify as Americans, as the name suggests, American descendants of slaves. Excuse me, you don't mind being called an American, you don't mind being called a slave, but you have a problem being called an African. Mm-hmm. To me, this is an attempt by a group of Negroes who are absolutely in love with white folks, absolutely in love with the American government, to show the American government that they are not African, want nothing to do with Africa, will not unite with African people just so they can get a couple crumbs from their master's table. The reparations movement has four main issues. Issue number one, and I'm not really worried about the ADOS because just like Black Lives Matter, it'll be a hot trend for a while and then it'll go away. One of the most important things that one of my Garveyite elders told me, he's now an ancestor, he died a couple years ago here in Philadelphia. He said, listen, don't always react when these new movements come. There's always going to be new movements. He said what you need to do is wait and see which of them are going to stand the test of time, because most of them will not, because the people who bring these movements into fruition are really just looking for a new hashtag. They're not really looking for change. So remember how hot Black Lives Matter was? You hardly hear about Black Lives Matter anymore. They're still out there, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't carry the same weight that it carried right after Michael Brown was murdered, or right after Freddie Gray, or right after Eric Garner. It died away. And one of the reasons it died away is because it was largely funded by white folks. I can promise you the ADOS movement will also be largely funded by white folks. So it's just a hashtag. It'll be here for a few years, and then it'll die off. But the biggest issues with the reparations movement, number one, there should be one reparations movement, not a whole bunch of them. There was one slavery. It sent us to the Caribbean. It sent us to Europe. It sent us all around the world. There should be one reparations movement, not 5 or 6 different ones, because it allows the oppressor to come in, play us against each other, and none of us ends up winning anything. So it needs to be a unity of mission. Number two, we need to make sure that we include with that the fact that we are also owed restitution and damages for what has been done to the Africans since slavery. This is not just about slavery. It is about slavery and the aftermath of slavery. In other words, what about what the European has done in Africa since the end of slavery? What about what they have done to black people in America since the end of slavery? What about the mass incarceration? What about the miseducation? What about the economic castration? You see, so we have to make sure that we don't just end this in 1865. Okay, we have to talk about what you've done to us since 1865. So let's not put a time limit on it. Then the next issue, where are the Arabs? I don't see anybody talking about the role that the Arab played in the slave trade. They were the first ones in it. They're still in it to this very day, and I'm not hearing anything about the Arabs. On top of that, what about the psychological damages of slavery? In fact, we're probably owed more for the psychological than we are for the unpaid labor. I mean, 243 years of unpaid labor is one thing, but when you look at 400 years of psychological terrorism and psychological self-hatred that is a direct result of the Ma'afa, I'm quite sure they owe us more for that than for our ancestors working on the plantation. And then the last piece that I would say is we also have to look at, if we're going to talk about reparations, you also have to repair the fact that Africans in this country after slavery, which is why we can't limit it to 1865, have been robbed of tens of thousands of acres of land all throughout this country illegally at gunpoint, Ku Klux Klan, White Knights Council, and just white vigilantism. You have black people who own land in this country by way of the ancestors who don't even know about it, because that is a whole research project that needs to take place. And if we're going to be doing some reparations, we need to do some restoration, and that means give us the land back that our ancestors owed. If you notice, nobody's talking about the restoration of land that was stolen from black folks, tens of thousands of acres from 1865 until 1965. What about the land they stole? This cannot just be about unpaid labor on the plantation. It must be a comprehensive assessment of what the European has done to destroy African life and African property.
Yeah, Ashe. Denori had a question on the YouTube line. He said, "What are your thoughts on those who want to go back to Africa during a repatriation, but they don't feel welcome when they get there from other Africans?"
Okay, here's what I say to that. Consciousness always finds itself if it looks for it. Dr. Umar Johnson, I probably go to Africa more than most scholars do. I've been to every coast in Africa, not every country. I come across African coons on the continent who don't want me there, who see me as an American, who don't think I have any entitlement to the land. You will come across some of them. But guess what? I've been going to Africa for almost 20 years now. 99% of the Africans I meet have the same Pan-Africanist consciousness that I do. They have the same Garveyite mentality that I do. They have the same focus on international solidarity that I do. So if you are of a high consciousness, then you will naturally attract to yourself Africans who are of like mind. I do not run into those problems. If I did, I wouldn't have had 6 consecutive group trips to Africa the past 6 summers. That right there has been exaggerated too much. If you consider yourself African, and if you want to be a part of the African Renaissance, you will find a way to be a part of it. Coming up with excuses that Africans don't want black folks is ridiculous. It's no different than when I hear some of my African brothers and sisters say, when we come to America, we're mistreated by African Americans. They laugh at us. They talk about the way we talk. They talk about our nappy hair, our black skin. It works on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. Just like you will find Africans who don't want you, Africans find African Americans who don't want them. Look for those who are like you. Most of them are. I have never ran into that as a stumbling block to progress. Never.